This is literally going to transform your life.
And what I love about belief coding is there's a process. It's really clear and easy to follow.
I've had many forms of therapy, and this is definitely by far one of my go-tos. So if it's for anything else, I'm not even using it for my business, I'm using it for me, to heal myself, to work through blocks, to build that sense of self-awareness.
You know, trauma isn't always with a capital T. It doesn't have to be huge and big. There's more little T traumas in our lives that make us who we are, and buried in those traumas are a set of belief systems.
Just taking part in the process has changed the way that I view everything that I do.
It's just been such an adventure. I think the person I ended up helping the most so far is myself, which is not what I was expecting.
The energy and the love and the support absolutely found my tribe.
It's amazing. You're going to transform your life and every single person that you use belief coding on, one belief at a time.
Hello and welcome to the Love, Peace, Truth, Karma podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Brown. Today, I've got the lovely Yvonne Smyth, who is a conscious parent coach. She's going to tell us how to create a more harmonious home environment between us and our children. Enjoy the podcast.
If you're in China, you just know it's corrupt. They want it to be like that here.
People are pretending to be 12-year-old kids, mate, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're 40-year-old men.
Now we're getting bombarded with all these death numbers, but there's no context there.
He'd got one child pregnant, he'd raped many others, and we had evidence to prove that.
Do you think evil still exists today as it did back then? And the answer should very simply be yes.
So Yvonne, welcome to the Love, Peace, Truth, Karma podcast.
Thank you, Leanne.
So glad that you could join us. Like I said, you are my first Zoom podcast.
We like a first. We always like a first. And it's St. Patrick's Day, so
it's St. Patrick's Day today. I should know that.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
And you are in Northern Ireland.
I'm in Northern Ireland, yes.
So it's very difficult for you to get into the studio. So you are a conscious parenting coach.
Yes.
Something that I really want to learn more about, and I have dipped into it bits and pieces. Obviously, I've got 3 girls of my own, and it's such a huge responsibility being a parent, isn't it? It's such a roller coaster ride, and we do the best we can, really, and sometimes it's not the best for our children, but it's the conditioning that has been passed down. So firstly, just tell us, what is conscious parenting for those that have never heard of it before?
Okay, so there's probably various definitions of what conscious parenting is out there, but I guess I have distilled it down to what it means for me and what works for me and what works for the clients that I work with, which is really, it's self-aware. It's about self-awareness and intentionality. Those 2 words are really key in conscious parenting. So what a large part of conscious parenting is about noticing how we habitually react in certain situations, what our behavior patterns are, noticing them in the first instance, and then tracking them back to, like you just mentioned, Leanne, the word conditioning, tracking that back to these beliefs that we have had put into us by our parents, our primary caregivers, society, and actually going, okay, do I want to believe that anymore? Is that really my belief? So it's like simple things. I mean, I use a really simple example a lot of the time, which is about the word respect. People often say, my child needs to respect me more, or my child is disrespectful. And then I go, well, I want you to imagine that I'm an alien and I don't know what that word means. So tell me what it means. And people come up with words like, well, I want them to do as they're told, and I want them to listen to me, and I want them. And then we're able to track back to all the voices that they heard in their childhood and see that they didn't come into this world as a baby with this understanding of what that word meant, but they learned it from the primary caregiver society. Children should be seen and not heard, all those things.
That era, yeah.
And that's about and that's just as an example, that's an example of, okay, where did that, so I'm reacting to my child. It's causing disharmony because my child is answering me back or not doing exactly what I tell them to do. And it's like, okay, well, where's that disharmony coming from? track it right back to the conditioning, and you start to go, okay, now I see. And do I want to believe that that's what respect means anymore? Is that the same respect, for example, that I afford my friends? I mean, one of the examples I use is a quick story. If you picked your friend up from their workplace and you were driving them home, and 5 minutes down the road they said, oh, I forgot a file that's sitting on my desk, I need to go back and get it, you would go, okay, no problem, I'll turn the car around. When our child is in the car and we're 5 minutes away from the school gates and they say, oh, I forgot my homework folder or my lunchbox or my PE kit, what do? We go, oh, for God's sake, you can never remember anything. Why are you so useless? Nah, 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 nah.
God, and I've heard myself saying them exact words to my children.
So have I, Leanne. So have I.
And
so
worse.
Yes. But this is what conscious parenting is all about. It's bringing awareness to these patterns of behavior, particularly the ones that are causing disharmony in our homes and causing us to butt up against our children, causing us to go into loggerheads with them, causing us to then feel really bad about ourselves because of how we've reacted, and tracking them back and saying, okay, I have learned this belief. It could be a belief about education, about success, about money, about food, about bodies, about health. And we've got all these beliefs nestled inside of us, and we don't even know we have them. And conscious parenting is bringing what is in our unconscious, which is all those beliefs, into conscious awareness and making resourceful and positive changes for ourselves and our families as a result.
Yeah. We did speak on the phone, and you mentioned Gabor Mate. I'm saying it right. And I actually just have watched little clips of him, and I pulled one up on YouTube, and he was talking about an actual memory, not a memory of his specifically, a journal of it that he pulled out of his mother's when he was a baby, and he was only, I think, a matter of weeks old, like just a baby. And she'd written in this journal how he'd been crying, and she said, oh, my love, Gabor, I wanted to pick you up and you were crying, but the doctor would have been very angry with me if I did it, and I kept you, I knew that it wasn't time to feed you, so I had to leave you. It broke my heart. And then she went on to say she lasted another like a couple of hours or whatever, and then she ended up giving in and picking him up. And she's written all this in a journal, how it was the fear of not upsetting the doctor, instead of going with her own intuition and connecting with her child that just wanted to feel that motherly connection. And that I've done the control crying with my with my eldest, I think, was that because obviously it was the first, and you want to do everything. Well, you want to do everything right as much as you can. So you get all this information from so many different resources, and everything's so conflicting, like have the baby in bed, don't have the baby in bed, let the baby cry, don't let the baby cry. So it's so difficult to actually know what you're doing is right. And I just think I remember sitting outside my daughter's door, not going in because she was getting up and she was like wanting to get out of me to pick her up out of cotton. They do cotton onto it very quickly and they do play you, but it's finding that balance of, I'm just actually, I feel like I did a lot of things wrong, with my children when they were younger, and just all this coming to light now, it is just so fascinating. But it's so difficult because there isn't the awareness, there isn't the teaching that you give in society. It should be something that is taught at school. Like, we're bringing an actual human being into the world. Like, why are we not trained to actually learn about the psychology of that and how to speak to that child to bring them into the world, but as best we possibly can and grow them up. So you mentioned Dr. Shafali as well. She, again, I've looked at a little bit of her. Tell me about her way of doing the conscious parenting and what her methods are and her advice.
Well, her whole kind of ethos is, instead of asking the question, how do I get my child to do X or to stop doing Y, is to actually look in the mirror and ask, why does it piss me off so much? Or why does it annoy me so much? Or why am I getting activated? What is there in me? She uses this sentence. What is there in me that is causing me to get triggered by what my child is either doing or not doing? So she talks about conscious parenting is parent-centric, whereas generally all of those books that you get, like The Contented Little Baby, don't even get me started on that book, Leanne. It ruined my early days of my first child.
Is that the crying I was saying?
That's the Contented Little Baby book, is the one where she talks about getting your child into this very strict routine, and where they sleep at exactly this time and exactly this time in a darkened room. And I remember trying all this. I read that book before my first child was born, and I thought, oh, this is going to be so easy and so lovely. And like you say, Leanne, I'm doing all the right things and I'm so well prepared. Oh yeah, right. And he literally refused to comply with anything that was in that book. And I ended up, literally, Leanne, flinging that book into the bin because it just created such despair for me. Now, don't get me wrong. I know some people who've used it and have done well with it, but it wasn't for me. And it, as you say, it kept me from my intuition.
But just going back, just picking up on what you said there, it worked well for them, but I wonder what repercussions it may have had on the child moving as they go to adulthood, and what it caused, trauma it caused, or discomfort it caused for their belief system because of the regimented structure that they had to follow.
No. Who knows? So anyway, I discovered Dr. Shefali, and as I say, so all of these other kind of parenting ways, most of the kind of books you will pick up about parenting that existed, say, 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, were all child-centric. It was all about using descriptive praise to get your child to do this, using reward charts, it was all about manipulating your child, essentially, manipulating and controlling your child's behavior. Whereas Dr. Shefali says, no, conscious parenting is parent-centric. It's, how do I need to heal myself so that I show up with the right energy? How do I need to calm my nervous system when my child triggers me? Because it's not them, it's my past and my memories and my conditioning and my own trauma that are causing me to react in a particular way to my children. So it is parent-centric. It's all about us and very little about the child.
Definitely. And like you say, we were saying earlier about how we sort of say, I want my child to respect me, and they're not listening to me, and, be quiet, stop. And the fact we say to our children, stop crying. We tell them to stop crying, and it's an emotion. Like we actually say it to, I was going to say we wouldn't say it to our friend, but we actually do, don't we? And that's obviously the conditioning of us being younger, of being told to stop crying. It's like when somebody cries, it's like a reaction to stop them crying. And now I've learned, cry, it's an emotion. It needs to be released. It needs to come out. And the reason for them crying is because they're frustrated, isn't it? They need to release that. And
Gabor Mate talks about that, actually, just very briefly to interject. He talks about the crying is not the pain, the healing is the pain, or the healing is the crying. There's healing in the crying. That's actually, as you said, the healing, letting it out. It cleanses your system. It lets it out, as you say. It needs to come out, and even to help my kids kind of understand, because they're not going to, at a young age, they weren't going to understand that idea about the cleansing and the healing. I just talk to them about the fact that crying is a bodily function in the same way as sweating or going to the toilet. Something needs to come out in order for you to feel better and for your body to be able to work at its optimal capability.
Wow. Yeah, that is. So, well, of course it is, isn't it? And then obviously it's the emotion, obviously just releasing that emotion and not suppressing it. He actually spoke about, on this same clip, he spoke about of a lady who was her son was kicking off basically, and she'd gone down to him and said, what's the matter? It's okay. Like what, just allowed him to do what he wanted to do and express his emotion, and then calm themselves, because he was teaching them, what's the word he used?
Co-regulation, was it?
Yeah, self-regulation, to be able to calm themselves, instead of being told to be quiet and suppress everything. And that's where the problems lie, isn't it, in later life? And we spoke about, so you have got 2 boys.
Yeah.
And so when did you start to learn about conscious? When did you think, this doesn't feel right? I feel like there's a better way. And then obviously that began to open your mind into going down the route of conscious parenting. How old were your sons?
So it was 2015. And so 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. One of them was 4 and one of them was 5. And it all started actually not with conscious parenting. It started with me doing an Nlp Practitioner Program. I'm a qualified Nlp practitioner, and I did my program then. And that was the first time that I had ever heard of the conscious and the unconscious, and the idea of our conditioning and beliefs and all of this. And it just was like, oh my God. It was like, I just had this realization. And it kind of then, doing that, sent me down a road of looking for stuff that was specific to do with parenting, that took into consideration this idea that we have been conditioned, that we have internalized beliefs from our childhood that are actually driving our behavior, that 95% of our behavior is driven by our unconscious. I mean, that statistic blows my mind. And I started looking then for anything that might. So I came across Dr. Shefali. And at that stage, podcasts weren't really around back then, Leanne. So I went on YouTube and I listened to every video interview or every video clip that I could find of Dr. Shefali. I also read her book, The Conscious Parent, which I go back and read probably once every year or so. And I did one of her courses as well, and just immersed myself. And I tell you, it was really hard at the beginning because it's so confronting, Leanne, to be told it's not what's wrong with them, it's what's wrong with you.
Yeah,
It was so confronting in the beginning. And it was like, really? Seriously? There's nothing wrong with me? I've been doing my best. And of course, I was doing my best. But over time, it started to make a lot more sense because I just started practicing catching my reactivity and, taking a breath and choosing a better response. And as I said, tracking back. Like, for example, a very simple thing that I was able to track back was, I have 2 boys and there's 19 months between them. And whenever they would start to fight, sibling rivalry, whenever they would start to argue and fight, I would get really activated. My nervous system would and I just wanted to scream at them to shut it down. And what I was able to do, just as an example, was, one of the questions is, what does this remind you of? Or does it remind you of anything from your childhood? And I was able to see that I had 2 older brothers with a similar age gap. And whenever they would fight, my dad used to come in and break it up. Now, he wasn't physically heavy-handed or anything, but his energy, his approach, it was disdain, contempt, disgust. So what was happening when my children are fighting is, my body has stored a memory of fear around 2 boys having an argument or a fight. And I remember as a child, I used to be scared if I saw them fighting, and I thought, oh no, daddy's going to come. Oh no, oh no, oh no. So what happens now is, my children have an argument or a row and my nervous system is activated. I don't have conscious control over that because, as Bessel van der Kolk says, your body keeps the score. My body has a memory inside of it of what 2 boys fighting meant. It meant this kind of fierce situation. So my body and it still does, goes into fight or flight when I hear them. But then I use breath work and humming and mantras and stuff to calm my nervous system rather than shouting at them to stop, because what they're doing is okay. It's normal, developmentally, whatever. But I have to stop myself from reacting, not find a way to stop them doing it.
And we did talk about the discipline side of it, the super nanny, which everyone bought into massively, including me, more so with my, again, my first child, Hallie. She was a little bugger. She was like into everything and like she would just go off and talk to anyone. You know, go shopping, turn around, she'd disappear. But that's really such a great quality, you know, to be able to have that confidence. But obviously, when she's 3 or 4 and I'm losing her in the Trafford Centre, it's not good. And it's happened more than once. You know, they'll tell you a story. There was one time she was there, and she disappeared, and it felt like hours, but it was probably, I don't know, it was still like a good 10 minutes. And we ended up finding her 2 shops down in a shoe shop, right at the back of the shoe shop, trying shoes on. And so she's just no fear in that girl, honestly. So she would play up and shout and scream in the restaurant. And, you know, I'd take her out and say, like, this is bad behaviour. And then when I think about it, she was just she wasn't crying and screaming. She was just making noise. And I wanted to suppress that because I felt like she was embarrassing me. So I'd take her out of the restaurant, put her on the step and say, no, you mustn't do that. And, you have to think about what you've done. And it just sounds so like, so horrific really to what we're doing to them. And it was something that you mentioned about your sons, didn't you? About and asking them, how did it make them feel? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So like I bought into Super Nanny too. I mean, Leanne, it makes me kind of cringe now, the fact that did we not even cotton on to the fact that she didn't have any children? You know, was that not even a red flag to us, you know? But anyway.
But it was on TV, and the TV tells the truth all the time. So.
Oh, yeah, of course it does, Leanne. You're spot on there. So, yes, it was on the TV. And yes, it was like, and again, I would have seen her before I had children. So again, I'd learned this already. So I did the naughty step thing with the kids. But, and then in doing all this work, I dropped it and realized that was a load of rubbish. But yes, I have asked my 2 boys, because they still remember, what was it? I've shown them a video clip on YouTube of Super Nanny so that they understood that I was following what I thought was an expert. I've shown them what it was all about, that she was on TV. But I asked them, how did you feel when you were on the step? And one of them said, I felt that you didn't love me. And the other one said, I felt that I was a bad person. Oh. Now, if that isn't enough to tell you don't ever use the naughty step and make a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old feel like that.
Yeah.
But I did it. So I'm not judging anyone who has done it or who's still doing it. You know, it's just, you do the best you can until you know better, and then you do better. And, but no, it's damaging. It's literally, what it literally is doing is when a child is struggling, you are abandoning them, and you are telling them that I don't love you unless you behave a certain way, and I can't cope with your behavior, and you're a bad person when you can't manage your own feelings or regulate your own feelings, which is complete rubbish when you think about the age of these children, and their brains are like a bowl of mush. They haven't got architecturally, actually structurally in their brain, the capability to do that. And in actual fact, the way we teach children how to regulate their emotions is by having them close. And that word you used earlier, co-regulation. So it's almost like we stay calm and they borrow our calm, and they learn how to be calm in situations that are difficult. And I describe that to clients as if, imagine you have a set of car jump leads, and they're attached to you, Leanne, and they're attached to your child. So your energy, your calm energy, literally goes down those jump leads, and they catch it, and then they're able to regulate and get back to a place of emotional well-being. So punishing children actually teaches them nothing, really, other than that the people who have the most power get to control the people who have less power.
Yeah, and that's soul destroying when you think of how it's so intimidating, isn't it? That, standing over them and telling, like you say, the fear of, my dad was quite aggressive as well. Like, and I mean, I've seen him give my brother the belt on an occasion, and my mum like slapped me on my legs and, or hit me with a brush, but it wasn't seen as anything, out of the ordinary then, was it? And I think my dad suffered abuse from his dad, like a lot, and obviously then again, it's that generational thing being passed down. It's just such an intimidating way of parenting, isn't it? You will fear me, you will respect me, you will not answer back, and then don't cry. It's when you think of how we've been led to believe is like how the generational sequence that has been passed down over and over and over again, and this is why the world is changing, and for the likes of yourself, and we are realizing, and you were saying then about energy is it is everything. It is everything. And learning about the David Hawkins scale of consciousness, and how we radiate, and when we vibrate at a certain level, we affect people around us just by existing, and to actually be able to get that realization of passing that energy on to your child just by, because I was going to say, like, there'll be people watching going, well, what the hell am I supposed to do when the kid's kicking off in the supermarket and kicking and screaming because they can't have the chocolate bar they want? And like you say, it's I suppose it's just getting over that fear of people looking at you and judging you. And that's a massive thing as well, isn't it? Judgment.
That's a massive part of it. But I also think what we have to do is we have to become comfortable with our children expressing their emotions, because that's actually part of it too. We feel uncomfortable and get activated when our children are screaming or crying or roaring, whether it's in the supermarket or whether it's at home. And we actually have to become comfortable with them having all of their feelings and allowing them, and not thinking that they're bad or that they're a reflection on us. So the child kicks off in the supermarket, you get down beside them and you go, hey honey, I know you really wanted that chocolate bar, and we're not having it today. And you let them have their feelings, but you don't shout at them or make them feel ashamed. You just stay connected. You stay calm. You get into a space of, it's okay, they're disappointed. Of course they are. I get disappointed and frustrated when I can't have what I want, and I'm 52, Leanne.
Yeah.
So, but I just have learned to express it better. But our children are actually incapable, when they're very young, of being able to rationalize or just, have empathy or use parts of their brains, because they don't actually exist yet, those parts of their brains. But we don't need to get all uptight about it. We can just go, I'm really sorry, honey. I know you want that chocolate bar, but no, not today, darling. And just carry on.
Yeah. And that's it. It's knowing about the boundaries and giving them so obviously that's one thing. Well, we're not having it today, I suppose, or if they wanted a biscuit before dinner, we can have the biscuit after, and they're going to kick off because they want it then. Like you said, they can't rationalize it. But it's also, it's about giving them the power to make their own decision within the boundary that you give them, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the key, isn't
absolutely.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can go to bed at between this time and this time, you choose, but obviously then it gets to that. I mean, my kids have always been terrible about going to bed. And then they go to bed and then they get up and down, and they're an absolute nightmare. And that's I was going to say, it's my fault for not like being more, I was going to say regimented.
Consistent.
That's the wrong word, Leanne.
Yeah, the wrong word.
Yeah. But yeah, it's being good, being kind to yourself as a parent as well, and not holding that guilt within ourselves. Because, and I'm going to ask you, like, I say things to my children, I'll ask them to do something and they'll ignore me, and I'll ask them in a nice way and then they'll ignore me, and then I'll ask them again and they'll ignore me, and then I will lose my shit eventually, and I'll end up screaming at them because I'll come home and the house is like tip and they've left pots and they've left sweet wrappers, and I will scream at them, and then they'll turn around to me and say, well, you didn't ask me nicely. I asked you nicely the first 15 times, and then you're going to get angry at me. And I'm like, is this the person that you want me to be? Do you like me screaming and shouting at you? And like, but one thing that I've always done is apologize for losing my temper. It's a key thing, that, isn't it?
It is. I mean, in kind of psychology terms and whatever, that's called rupture and repair. Okay, so we have a connection with our child, and we're going to rupture it by losing our shit, and we are. I mean, I do too. God, I'm not sitting here in some ivory perfect tower, Leanne. I lose mine. I lost mine this morning, actually. But so you create a rupture in the connection, but then you repair it. It's a bit like if you puncture your bicycle tube, you don't go, oh, my bicycle, that's it, my bicycle's done, you repair it, you know. So it's the same thing. So yes, you give a heartfelt apology. And a great thing to do with children is what's called a do-over. And it doesn't matter what age your children are, even at your children's ages, where you kind of say, you know, I'm not very happy about how I spoke to you just now. I'm sorry for how I just spoke to you. I spoke to you in a way that was actually disrespectful. What I wish I had said instead was, or what I wish I had done instead was, because your child then actually gets the experience of what it would have been like if we had behaved the way we would have preferred to behave. And so that's really powerful, as opposed to simply, oh, I'm really sorry. That's great. But if we say it, because it helps us to think as well, okay, so no, what I wish I had said was this, or how I wish I had handled this was. And that's really powerful, because it shows our children a huge amount of respect in the real world, in the real meaning of the word respect for them, that we've actually thought about that. I mean, sometimes I'll go away and think about something that happened 2 days ago, and I'll come back to my kids and go, do you know what? I've been reflecting on something that happened the other day, and I said this, and it might be even something that I didn't go mental about, but something where I sounded a bit judgy, and I might go back and say, this is what I've thought about it, and this is what I wish I had said instead, you know? So yeah, we're going to lose it. But the aim is to lose it less. You know, over time, but also at the same time, you know, as you say, huge compassion for ourselves, because we, as you say, have not been the only model that we have for parenting is what our parents taught us by how they were parents to us and how we grew up. And yes, then, as you say, that there's lots of great books, but as you say, so much of it is conflicting and everything else. So huge compassion for being a human in this messy world of relationships, because it is a relationship with our children, and relationships are by their very nature messy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Parenting it is a relationship, like you're saying. It's got to be worked out like any relationship. Yeah, I usually say that I'm sorry, and then say it's because of X, Y, Z. So I suppose, is that making an excuse for my behaviour?
No, that's okay. I mean, I will say too, you know, God, I'm really sorry. I'm really tired. I didn't sleep well last night. You know, I might say that, but I might also say, but it still is not okay for me to behave like that. And I'm sorry. And what I would have done, or what I wish I'd done if I wasn't feeling tired and I was feeling my best self, this is how I would have preferred to have handled that, you know. And yeah, it is okay because again, we're human. And so, and I mean, I didn't sleep well last night, and I woke up this morning like a flippin' grump. So I, as I said, wasn't showing up as my best self this morning either. So I apologized.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What do you think makes a difference between it? Because obviously I was saying about doing all the super nanny stuff with Hallie, and like I tried it with Lilia, and like you say, one of your boys just was not having it, and she did not want to conform or like to, you know, she would not allow anything. She is the stubbornest girl, and she would just get up and down, and she would ended up like sitting on the step, but I would try like say she couldn't go somewhere or do something, and nothing ever fazed her. What do you think makes like the child so different? You know, the same environment, they're brought into the same environment. Obviously, do you think my parenting was different with her, and that's why she didn't resonate with it? Or
it might have been. I mean, I think we often think, oh, how can children be so different? In the same household, but they're not parented the same, because in the first instance, the first child is an only child for a period of time, and they get all of your attention, and they also probably too get more of the tension as well of the attention, because we're more, like you say, worried about our first child, about getting it all right, and all of this. And then the second child has an older sibling. So it's different. They're never an only child. So they have a completely different experience because they always have an older sibling. But I also think, Leanne, being, not to get too woo-woo on it, I believe that that our children choose us. I believe that our children choose the parents that are perfect for them, but are also perfect for the evolution of the parent. So I have two very different children. And my first child, although he wouldn't conform to the structure of, say, the sleeping and the eating and the whatever, he was a very, and still is, quite an introspective child, a real observer of human nature. He would sit in a chair for hours, and just look about him. Very, what you would call, and I hate to use this expression, but an easy baby, very kind of placid and easygoing and all of that. Cried when he was hungry, but other than that was very. So then come along number two. Number two, I must came into the world, I think, kicking and screaming, as in, I'm here to make a difference. So a personality the size of a house from the day and hour he was born. The little swing seat that the eldest one would sit in for hours looking about. You put Marco into it, he wouldn't sit in it for 1 minute. He's screaming, bucking like a bucking bronco to get out of the flipping thing. He crawled at 7 months.
Wow.
By a year, he would only wear certain clothes. You'd put no, everything on his terms.
Lilia was really easy baby. Hallie was more difficult as a baby, but she would allow me to dress her what she wanted, but she'd be off disappearing, whereas Lilia was always a calm baby and got into a routine really easily, but then become more stubborn, I suppose, nothing phased her, do you know what I mean? But I do feel like that's setting her up in a good stead for later on in life, because she is standing in her own power, and she's got her own mind, and she's very individual, whereas Hallie just wants to please me. Sorry. Hallie just wants to please me, and Lola's a bit like that. My youngest and my eldest are very similar in the sense that they hate to think that I'm upset with them, because that it's that what's the word? Is it not guilt? What's the word I'm looking for? It's that fear of me
thinking badly of them more.
Yeah. So that would upset them more. So they would just be like, "Oh, I'm really sorry." Whereas Lilia, you'd shout her and she just not bothered. She wouldn't come and apologise or anything. She's the one that used to write. She'd write letters saying, "I hate my mummy," or and then you'd find them. And that's what I used to do when I was a child. Though I used to go off and write awful letters to my mum, or say things to her, and then I'd write another one later on, and then put it under the door saying how much I loved her and how sorry I was. So
so we were just as irrational and crazy then, you see, when we were children. But here's the thing, Leanne, if we were to ask anybody how they want their children, or how they would hope that their children will turn out as adults, okay, what's the list? The list is, I want them to stand up for themselves, to have a voice, to not succumb to peer pressure, to be able to get on well with, in different environments, all of this stuff.
Happy in their own skin.
Happy in their own skin, comfortable in their own skin, that they feel that they are, being themselves, that they're happy to be themselves, to follow their own path rather than following the crowd, blah, blah, blah. But is that how we treat them as children then? Because you can't have a child who has a voice as an adult when you don't give them a voice as a child, and you tell them to be quiet and stop crying and stop answering me back, and that's not okay. And you want them to question things. Well, you have to let them question things now then, So we what we want for them as adults is, we tend to shut down in them as children. And it's so we kind of have to sit back and think, how do I want them to turn out? So if I want them to turn out where they will question things and challenge injustices and speak up for themselves and advocate for themselves and for their friends, Gotta let them do it now, hard and all as it is. We're the training ground.
Yeah. And actually, when you say that, what do? We put them in school at such a young age where they're not able to do all them things. Or if they do, a lot of the time they get,
punished
for it. Because there's so many teachers that are... It's their way or the highway, isn't it, really? And if you think about the last couple of years that our children have been subject to in school, like there's been no other alternative suggestion that things aren't being done correctly, or they've not been able to go against the grain, or if they have, there's only been a small amount of people that have turned up at school without a mask on, or refused the testing, and we've disagreed with it. And I think we had Philly J on the Divine Show that we've been recording, and saying how she wants to find the person that said that the children should wash their hands to happy birthday, because that is now going to bring them back into that trauma for the rest of their life, when they're singing happy birthday in all the years to come, because they'll remember about the pandemic.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, so there's so much that's gone on that will have caused trauma with regards to this whole thing. But even just them going to school and having to answer to authority, and if they have a difference of opinion in class that doesn't agree with what the teacher's teaching, because let's face it, there is, for me now, the stuff that I've researched is there is so much more than what we've been taught in school, even history and everything that's been kept from us, the electricity, like the fact that, we should be living free, it's so much. What are your thoughts on school?
Well, yeah, school is a tricky one for me, because I thought of taking them out of school and homeschooling them a number of years ago, and that was kind of the path that I was on, probably back in 2000, and started researching it maybe in 2017, and that was the path that we were going on. Actually, we were going to do that, and then my husband and I separated in 2018, and it just wasn't going to work. That was kind of the year it was going to be. They weren't going to go back to school necessarily in September 18. But then we broke up in the summer of that year, and it just wasn't going to be possible with for me to be able to work and homeschool them, and with not having to and it was also a case of, look, just settle them back into school, because it's what they're familiar with for now, until they because they need that familiarity, just in terms of the struggles that were going on generally. And then it hasn't worked. And actually, there's also, to be fair, Leanne, a part of me that would struggle. I benefit from space, having my own space and my own time. And it's actually
we
why...
all do.
Yeah, I actually realize, although I like the idea of homeschooling, because I didn't like the idea of them being in this education system, that actually I probably would not have flourished or thrived if I had them at home all the time and I was doing it. So they're in the system, but they are very well aware. We talk about the system and the punishments, and talk about how it's very different at home to how it is at school. It's a system you're in. You can either decide to play the system and play by its rules, even though they're not the same rules that we as a family, or the same values that we as a family have, or not. And my eldest son kind of plays by the rules because he just finds it easier. My youngest son, no, I get phone calls from school and he's at the headmaster's office, and no, but it's his choice. He's 11, and he doesn't conform to a lot of their ways of being, and that's okay. And I never punish him for, he doesn't. It's not that he does anything bad. He's not bullying anybody or not. But if he answers back, or gets out of his seat,
God forbid.
Oh, God forbid, and it's so I just...
It's like putting your hand up to go to the toilet, and it's like,
yeah,
it's just all the little things that you think of, that this conditioning, isn't it? Which really why we're in the mess that we're at, because of we've been conditioned to answer to authority. So when we leave school, the government then is our authority, and that's what they've said. And if you're sitting at home watching the TV every day, you can understand how people have got so caught up in that mind
Totally.
control, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're so right, Leanne.
Yeah, it is. It's a scary thought, but and again, I do think that it is changing, and people are now building communities with schools. We had a lady on that had done that, and obviously myself have taught Lilia out, and Lola. Lilia's at home. She's doing some GCSEs online, and she's doing. I've actually got a little work experience for interior design because she loves all that, and things like and my girls have now started a slime business off their own back. Yeah, so these little things, obviously being in Lola's in a little homeschooling group. We have a tutor, which is great, and there's only like 7 or 8 of them, but all like I think 3 of them are all. One of them's got like a perfume rollerball business now that she's set up. She's 9. Another one's got a candle business. Lola and Lilia and a friend have now set up this slime business. And I think because there's not like all that homework piled on them, because that's another subject of like there's so much that's thrown at them. If they're not at school like for however many hours a day, Monday to Friday, the whole weekend, then they've got all this added pressure of getting all this homework done. And for what? Because they're not allowing their brains to actually be creative and think for themselves and explore them, the things that actually, so many people that have left school without any GCSEs have actually flourished and gone on to make huge amounts of money and be super successful. So, just think it, like you say, it is parenting, but I think if we get both the schooling right and the education and the parenting at home, there'll be no stopping the future generation. We've got a lot to fix from the damage has been done for the last 2 years with the children, let's face it. Finally, can you just give the viewers any specific advice to how to move forward with conscious parenting? Like how can they get in touch with you, but also, if there was to take a couple of key things away from this to sort of start off thinking about how to help their children be better by making themselves better parents.
Yeah, I suppose it goes back to that kind of main point of focusing on yourself, actually, more so than focusing on your children, focusing on your own well-being, mentally, spiritually, physically. Focus on you being the most grounded, most settled, most fulfilled person, because actually that's what your children need more than anything, is for you to be in a good place, grounded, sturdy, all of that, because then you are far better able to communicate with your children, to be there for them and all of that. So I would say kind of work on yourself and your own kind of fulfillment, I guess. And then I suppose in relation to, because I do know people are going, yeah, but hang on, I'm just sitting here and my child doesn't listen to a word I say or closes their bedroom door and I never see them. That my biggest tip for that is to spend at least 15 minutes a day with each child individually, uninterrupted, without any distraction, without any phones, without anything, and allow the child to lead whatever they want to do in that 15 minutes. That is called something like special time, and it's as relevant to a 1-year-old as it is to a teenager, because we think we've been conditioned. And this is another thing we've been conditioned to believe, Leanne, that teenagers don't need us anymore, and they don't want us. Actually, needs the wrong word. The teenagers don't want us anymore. They just want to do their own thing. That once they get to 14 or 15, you've lost them. That's it. Just let them go. That's just how it is, and that's not how it is. They need us and they want us. In actual fact, and if you,
probably
I have
more
seen,
so.
yes, in fact, yes, they maybe need us less in terms of doing things for them because they can do things themselves. But in terms of emotional support, it's a very turbulent time for them internally, and they need our emotional support more than anything. And I have seen parents who have come to me in complete despair around their relationship with their children, saying, we're always at loggerheads, whether this is a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, we're always at loggerheads. There's so much disharmony, so much shouting, so much, and got them to spend religiously, it's like a prescription, 15 minutes a day without fail. You will turn things around. It's amazing. It fills up our child's connection cup, and it just gives them our presence. It shows how much we care about them, and it just gives them so much. And particularly when it's about we're doing what they want to do, not what we want to do. So they have agency. So that means if it's a 5-year-old, maybe they want to, play with Lego, you play with Lego. Maybe it's if it's a 15-year-old actually, and they want you to sit and watch them playing a video game, you sit and watch them playing a video game and you ask them questions. You get into their world. And particularly teens, do not let the tweens and the teens disappear off into the world of technology without you going there with them. And I don't mean that simply from a point of security, because that's a different thing entirely. But I mean, whatever your child is interested in, get flipping interested in it with them. It may not be what you would prefer they're doing. You may be clueless about it, but like I will sit and like yesterday, my eldest boy was playing FIFA. Now, am I remotely interested in FIFA, an online football game? No. But he said, will you watch me playing? I said, yes, of course I will. So I sat down beside him and I watched him and I asked him a load of questions. And I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it doesn't matter, because actually that gives the child agency, because they're teaching me something. And it feels good to a child to be able to teach a grown-up something. So honestly, 15 minutes a day. And if your teenager shuts their door and won't let you in, sit outside the door for 15 minutes every day and say, I'm just sitting out here, and if there's anything you want me for, if there's anything I can do, I'm here for you, and do it. And I've seen somebody do that 5 days in a row, and their teen let them sit there for 5 days in a row. And on the 6th day, they said, please come in.
That's magical. That's powerful. Yeah. And 15 minutes, because we just do get caught up in our own lives, don't we? And yeah, such good advice. And yeah, I'm definitely going to, I hope I'll give more than 50 minutes, but you're like saying non-interrupted, just 100% one-on-one attention. Yeah.
Put the phones away, put your phone in another room, say, I am going to give you my undivided attention. Let, what you want to do, what you want to show me, whatever.
Yeah. And ultimately work on yourself, make sure yourself
is.
So that's really good advice. Thank you so much for coming on. And I hope our viewers, my viewers, got so much from everything that you've said. And where can we find you?
You can find me mostly on Instagram, to be honest. I don't have a website at the moment. I'm on Instagram as @thisparentingadventure. So I'm on Instagram.
I will tag that as well.
To be honest, tag that. So that's where I show up mostly. And, look out for, I have a workshop that I'm working on at the moment that I'll probably be delivering next month. That is how to become a more conscious parent, essentially. So people can watch out for that as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.